Hello everyone to yet another video on the topic of data analytics core concepts. Today I would like to discuss with you few major types of data, which is eventually very important topic for today. And these are the types of the data that you will eventually come across very often when dealing with, with an analytics solutions. So without further ado, let's get down to the business. So number one topic that I would like to discuss today is the master data. The second one is the transactions types of data. And the third one is the reference data. So what are these data all about? Let's take them one by one and discuss this in detail. So master data. So the master data refers to the core data related to an entity. So what is an entity when we talk about this? Uh, from the core concepts of the database management system, core concepts, we remember that there are entities and then there are relationships between those entities. So in this topic, let's talk about the entity, the major entities only. So the entity actually is a primary actor in the whole picture. It plays a vital role in all the forthcoming development life cycle, without whom nothing will eventually make sense. So few examples of the master data or the core entities. One of the core entities is the customers data. No matter which type of business you are actually dealing with, there will be customers. So the customers data is one of the most important and the major types of master data that is available across all the realms of the data analytics. Uh, Plus their addresses and their demographics is also one of of the major data types of the master data. Uh, Other types of data is, for instance, when we talk about in the retail industry, are their product lines. So their products, they could have the similar products or niche products that they're actually offering. So this kind of data is also type of the master data. Here, I would also like to emphasize on a fact that the master data should always available. Depends on what kind of solution that you're talking about. The master data can vary, but the thing is, it has to exist. If it does not exist, then there's a problem because then you will not be able to address a certain business requirement. So, if I may just elaborate this example any further, so let's talk about this kind of data. So you see the this is kind of a very basic example of the master data. So a customer's master data. So you have the first name, you have the last name, and then you have the database date of birth, sorry. So you have the date of birth available, and then you have the gender of the customer available. So you see, taking the example of the first normal form, this is actually in the first normal form. They are all related, they are unique, they are all related, and they are tied to each other. So that is one of the major elements that we talk about from the business perspective. That is very important, that they should be related. So let's go on and discuss the transactions data. So what is a transaction? So the transaction data refers to a transaction, if as the name suggests. For instance, a customer actually has made. Taking a crude example of the transaction, you go online, for instance, a person goes online and buys a ticket or buys a product from an online web store. Is kind of a transaction data. So this transaction can be a success or an unsuccessful transaction. It depends on the operation, and it could be something that the customer actually would like it's not a transaction. It's not a successful transaction. It's not an unsuccessful transaction, but what it's an intermediate transaction which customer would like to maybe complete at a later point in time. So these are kind of the states of the transaction. But you see the whole concept, the whole idea is of the transaction is that you have an operation that you've performed. uh, the transaction okay So we will take this example further and talk about the telecommunications industry. For instance, a customer makes a call, or they top up their prepaid accounts. So it is kind of a transaction that the customer has actually made, which has triggered an operation in the backend, which is actually a vital information as well. Uh, uh, One thing that I would like to discuss here is the transaction may or may not occur. So if you see this example, this customer has made a call. You have a call ID, and then you have a call E, and then you have the call duration and the incoming and outgoing types of data. Uh, this can or cannot exist, as I mentioned already, because the thing is, if the customer has bought a SIM, they are still a customer. Their customer master data will still exist, but this transaction, let's say if they have just recently bought a SIM, so they do not have made any calls, or maybe they have not yet made any transactions. They have not yet top up um, their accounts. They have not added any money. But the thing is, the customer data exists, and the transaction data does not exist. But you have to make sure that if the customer data actually exists and their transaction or as well, the transaction has to be complete. For instance, from this perspective, if I have a call ID and you have a call E, but you don't have the call duration available or the type of the call, which is an incoming or outgoing based on IO and O mentioned in this data, if you do not have this kind of data available, then you cannot make any facts out of this data. So you cannot define or derive any facts out of this data. So this data is actually not worthwhile. To relate this transaction to a certain master data. So this is kind of an important element that somebody has to take care of. Preferably the business analytics or the data analytics or the test analytics as well, because the test analysts have to make sure that whatever they are dealing with, they have to have this data available as well. Um, the third one I would like to discuss today is the reference data. So what is actually a reference data? Reference data, actually most of the people confuse master data with reference data, or they think that this is one way or the other the same things. But this is actually a false understanding. Although they look like the same, but they are not actually the master datas. Uh, so One more misunderstanding that I would like to discuss here is uh, to relate master data with the reference data with the metadata. Sorry, the metadata is totally different from master data. The metadata is totally different from reference data. The metadata is totally different from the reference data as well. As a matter of fact, the metadata is a type of data, but metadata defines the characteristics of a data. uh, Depends on the objects actually the one deals with. For instance, the name of a certain file, when you receive a certain data file, or you have an mp3 file, or you have a video file, for instance, so the size and format of the object, or a picture, or video, or an audio, depends on the length of the video, so on, can be a type of metadata. But you can see, uh, taking an example of reference data, I would like to take you back to our discussion. So the reference data is, what is the reference data? Because I would like to explain this to you further and in details. So let's take an example of a library. So you go to a library and then you are looking for a book. So there are books placed on the shelves, but you cannot find a book at a certain point, at a certain place. So what would you do? uh, you will go into the index. Okay, so there's normally an index drawer, so you can open actually the drawer, and then you start looking into the indexes where the book actually lies. um, so that's one of the basic examples of the reference data. So in the case of analytics and data warehouse, the reference data can be, for instance, the countries, the data of the countries, the name of the countries, the name of the cities, uh, and their capitals, for instance, capitals of the countries. So this is kind of a reference data that you actually will come across many times during the course of the data analytics development solutions. Um, Now, just to give you some idea of what is actually um, what what will be the application of these kinds of data when you are dealing with the stars and snowflake schemas, which I will discuss with you in the later videos. The reference data actually become the slowly changing dimensions, because you will not see the customer names, the country's name, sorry, not the customer's name, the country names, or and the rest of the data changing very often. Sorry, very seldom. Uh, but the transactions are going to be very often, and the master data will eventually also change I will say, comparatively to the reference data and to the reference data to the transactions data. The customer also the master data change also very slowly. So these are kind of the information that you will probably see playing an important role in the star and the snowflake schemas. um, the thing is, we will discuss this when we discuss the stars and snowflake schemas in details. So I will try to refer this video when we discuss the star and snowflake schemas as well. But the thing is, the stars and snowflake schemas are not really the data warehousing that we're talking about. They are kind of a chunk of a data warehouse. So they are usually in a layman terms called the data marts. But this is actually out of the context of this video. So when we discuss this, I would like to discuss with you that in details. So stay tuned for more videos, and thank you very much for listening up to this far. And I would like to wish you a great day and happy learning. Thank you so much.